The air in the great hall hummed with a chaotic symphony of murmurs, clattering cutlery, and the distant, sonorous voice of the headmaster. Lysander Thorne, a boy whose frame was still slender, but whose eyes held an ancient, calculating light, felt the tremor of anticipation ripple through him. It wasn't the giddy excitement of his peers, but a cold, keen edge of purpose. His parents, minor purebloods clinging to the fraying edges of an almost forgotten lineage, had instilled in him a single, suffocating truth. He was merely a thorn. Another indistinct face in the vast tapestry of magical Britain, overlooked, unremarkable. But Lysander refused to be unremarkable. He watched the procession of first years shuffle towards the stool, each face a tableau of nerves and hope. He noted the way some preened, others huddled, and a select few, like himself, wore a mask of detached observation. Cassius Lestrange, a boy whose expensive robes seemed to radiate a faint aura of inherited arrogance, swaggered past, his head held high. A Lestrange, Lysander mused, already positioned by birthright. Lysander felt a familiar coil of resentment tighten in his gut, quickly transmuted into a sharper resolve. The established order might favor the Lestranges, the Malfoys, the Knots, but Lysander Thorne would redefine what it meant to hold power. He wouldn't inherit it, he would forge it. When his name was finally called, Thorne Lysander, a hush fell over his small group of fellow 11-year-olds. He walked with an unhurried grace that belied his age, his gaze sweeping across the 4 house tables, absorbing the subtle nuances of their expressions. He sat on the stool, the sorting hat, smelling faintly of ancient dust and forgotten dreams, descending over his eyes. Another thorn, a reedy voice whispered in his mind. A quiet line, subtle magic. But you are different, aren't you, Lysander? Such ambition, burning so fiercely. A hunger for recognition, for control. Lysander merely thought control. Absolute control. Not through brute force, but through strategy, through intellect. Indeed. A mind like a labyrinth, intricate and dangerous. You see the flaws in the existing tapestry, don't you? The weaknesses, the vulnerabilities. You wish to mend it, to reshape it, in your image. The hat chuckled, a dry rustle of old fabric. There's cunning here, a thirst for power that rivals some of the greatest I've seen. A natural manipulator, a leader in the making. Yes. Oh, without a doubt. Slytherin. The final word echoed through the hall, and Lysander felt a thrill of vindication. He slipped off the stool, a small, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips. As he made his way to the cheering Slytherin table, he took note of the faces. Some offered genuine welcoming smiles, others, like Cassius Lestrange, regarded him with a dismissive glance, as if to say, just another pureblood. Lysander settled onto the bench, already mentally cataloging potential allies and rivals. His eyes fell on a girl with sharp, intelligent features and meticulously braided dark hair, seated a few places down. Seraphina Vance. He'd overheard snippets of conversation. She was bright, resourceful, and had a reputation for getting things done, albeit quietly. A pragmatist, then. Interesting. The feast began, and Lysander ate sparingly, his mind alight with plans. He listened, absorbing the chatter of his new housemates. Tales of family legacies, whispered boasts of minor magical feats, and nascent rivalries already bubbling to the surface. He understood, instinctively, that this was not merely a school, it was a microcosm of the entire magical world, a battleground for influence. His first week at Hogwarts was a blur of ancient corridors, flickering candlelight, and the scent of parchment and old spells. Lysander excelled in every class, not by showing off, but by demonstrating a quiet, insightful understanding that often surpassed the standard curriculum. He observed his teachers, their strengths and weaknesses, their preferences and biases. Potions under the watchful, discerning eye of Professor Blackwood quickly became Lysander's favorite. Blackwood, with his severe expression and eyes that seemed to miss nothing, was also the head of Slytherin. He moved through the dungeon classroom with a languid grace, his silken robes barely rustling, dispensing precise instructions and acerbic criticisms in equal measure. During their second potions lesson, the task was to brew a simple shrinking solution. Lysander followed the instructions meticulously, but as he stirred his cauldron, he noted a subtle disparity in the textbook's diagram versus the actual reaction occurring. The recipe called for 2 anti-clockwise stirs after adding the shrivel fig, followed by 1 clockwise. Lysander, however, remembered a footnote in an obscure, supplementary text he devoured on the train, a variant that hinted at a slightly different stirring pattern for optimal potency, particularly with younger shrivel figs. He hesitated for only a fraction of a second. Following the textbook would yield a perfectly acceptable potion. Deviating, however, could lead to disaster or brilliance. Lysander, never one to shy from risk when the potential reward was great, subtly altered the last stir, making it 2 clockwise rotations instead of 1. His potion, when finished, glowed a shade deeper, a richer, more vibrant green than anyone else's. Professor Blackwood, gliding silently between the tables, stopped beside Lysander's cauldron. His gaze was unreadable, his pale eyes narrowing slightly. "Thorne," he drawled, his voice a low rumble. "A rather robust hue, wouldn't you say?" Lysander met his gaze without flinching. "I believe it's achieving optimal potency, Professor." Blackwood dipped a silver ladle into the potion, a tiny wisp of steam rising. He brought it to his nose, inhaling deeply, then took a minute's sip. Lysander held his breath. A slow smile, barely a twitch of the lips, spread across Blackwood's face. It was not a warm smile, but one of profound satisfaction. Optimal potency, indeed, Mr. Thorne. Most first years merely achieve acceptable. Tell me, what prompted this enhancement? Lysander feigned a moment of innocent contemplation. The textbook mentioned the importance of precise stirring, Professor. I simply felt that the natural energies of the shrivel fig, combined with the initial infusion, might benefit from a slightly more balanced rotational force at the end. He offered a deferential, yet subtly knowing look. Blackwood regarded him for a long moment, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Recognition? Amusement? Balanced rotational force, he repeated, a hint of dry humor in his tone. A rather elaborate way of saying you improvised, wouldn't you agree? Perhaps, Lysander admitted, a respectful but firm note in his voice. But with a clear objective, greater efficacy. Blackwood gave a soft, almost inaudible huff. Indeed. 10 points to Slytherin, Thorne. And a word of advice, innovation is commendable. Recklessness, less so. Learn the difference. He moved on, leaving Lysander with a distinct sense of accomplishment. He hadn't just brewed a potion. He had made a statement. Later that evening, in the low-lit depths of the Slytherin common room, Lysander watched Cassius Lestrange holding court. Cassius was recounting a dramatic, embellished tale of his family's prowess in dueling, surrounded by a small clique of fawning first years. Lysander noticed Seraphina Vance on the periphery, her expression neutral, but her eyes missing nothing. She caught Lysander's gaze, and for a fleeting moment, a spark of understanding seemed to pass between them before she looked away. Lysander knew that true power wasn't about birthright or loud boasts. It was about knowing how to influence, how to weave a web of obligation and loyalty, how to make others believe your vision was their destiny. Cassius Lestrange was an obstacle, a symbol of the old guard he intended to dismantle. But Lysander wouldn't confront him directly, not yet. He would play a longer game, a more subtle one. He picked up a discarded copy of A History of Magic and feigned absorption, but his mind was already miles away, dissecting the dynamics of the common room, envisioning the subtle maneuvers required to shift the balance of power. The first step, he decided, would be to understand Lestrange's weaknesses, his vulnerabilities. And then he would exploit them. A cold, exhilarating clarity settled over Lysander. This was just the beginning. The serpent had found its crown, and it was time to claim it, scale by meticulous scale. He closed the book, his gaze fixed on Cassius Lestrange across the room. The game had truly begun. The thrill of it, Lysander mused, was like a perfectly brewed potion, complex, potent, and with just the right amount of danger. The initial maneuvers, the subtle nudges that had left Grayson looking like a clumsy oaf and secured Lysander's quiet authority among the first-year Slytherins, had been satisfying. But satisfaction was merely a stepping stone, not a destination. He needed more. He needed anchors, allies, minds sharp enough to assist, yet pliable enough to follow. His gaze often fell upon Seraphina Vance, a girl whose sharp, observant eyes missed little and whose silence spoke volumes of a mind constantly dissecting. She carried herself with an understated confidence, a cool pragmatism that Lysander recognized as kindred. She wasn't one to grandstand, but her academic performance and incisive comments in classes marked her as someone worth cultivating. He found her one late afternoon, tucked away in a quiet alcove on the 4th floor, a tome on ancient runes resting open in her lap. The late autumn light, filtered through a high-arched window, cast a pale glow on her thoughtful face. "Vance," he said, his voice a low, even tone that didn't startle, but announced his presence. She looked up, her expression unreadable, though a flicker of something curiosity, perhaps, crossed her features. "Thorne." Lysander leaned against the stone wall opposite her, arms crossed. "You understand the nuances, don't you?" Seraphina's eyebrow arched slightly. Nuances of what, precisely? Of power. Of ambition. The difference between a roar and a whisper. The effectiveness of a calculated move versus a blunt charge. He watched her carefully, assessing. Most here are focused on petty rivalries, on inherited prestige. They fail to see the larger game. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. "And you, Thorne, do you see the larger game?" "I intend to play it," he said, his eyes locking with hers. "And I recognize a fellow player. You're not content with mediocrity, with merely existing within the established order." She closed her book, setting it aside. "No. The established order has too many cracks, too many inefficiencies. It caters to stagnation." Her voice was quiet, but there was an underlying steel in it. "What do you propose?" "An alliance," Lysander stated simply. "You have a keen intellect, a strategic mind. I have vision, ambition, and a willingness to transcend conventional boundaries. Together, we could achieve considerably more than apart." He paused. "You'd be my right hand. A partner, not a subordinate. Your insights would be invaluable." Seraphina regarded him for a long moment, her gaze analytical. Lysander felt no need to fill the silence, letting his offer stand on its own merit. Finally, she nodded slowly. "A partnership of equals, then, operating for mutual advancement within a greater design. I find that acceptable, Thorne. But understand, my loyalty is to the objective, not necessarily to you personally." "That's all I ask," Lysander replied, a genuine, if small, smile gracing his lips. Pragmatism over sentiment. A sound foundation for any true power. With Seraphina now a declared ally, Lysander found his path to forbidden knowledge considerably smoother. Her methodical approach to research, coupled with his own intuition and growing understanding of obscure magical theory, was a formidable combination. Their nocturnal excursions to the restricted section of the library became more frequent, aided by Lysander's surprisingly adept and, strictly speaking, illicit, use of minor distraction charms on the wandering caretaker. Deep within the dusty shelves, under the baleful gaze of forgotten gargoyles, they delved into texts that crackled with ancient, barely contained power. Lysander was particularly fascinated by a crumbling leather-bound tome, The Serpent's Coil, a compendium of influence and subtlety. It spoke of charms not meant to blast or bind, but to insinuate, to subtly twist perception, to weave invisible threads of control. It was precisely the kind of magic his family was rumored to dabble in, but never openly admitted to. He spent hours practicing minor applications, feeling the subtle hum of energy, the delicate control required, far more challenging than any simple jinx. Seraphina, meanwhile, unearthed treatises on ancient wards and nonverbal spellcasting, broadening their joint repertoire. As Lysander's mastery of these subtle arts grew, so did his impatience with the overt arrogance of Cassius Lestrange. Cassius, with his booming voice, his ostentatious displays of pure-blood superiority, and his sneering dismissal of anything not sanctioned by tradition was a constant irritant. His influence, though based on his family name rather than genuine merit, was undeniable among a certain segment of the Slytherin population. Lysander knew he needed to be cut down, publicly and definitively, to fully establish his own authority. The opportunity presented itself during an informal, yet highly anticipated, dueling practice held in a secluded chamber off the Slytherin common room. It was ostensibly for older students to sharpen their skills, but first years often gathered to watch, a silent pecking order often reinforced by the outcomes. Cassius, with his lineage, always insisted on demonstrating his prowess, usually with flashy, high-powered spells. This evening, Cassius was in his element, disarming a fourth year with an unnecessarily dramatic Expelliarmus that sent the older boy's wand clattering across the stone floor. He preened, sweeping his dark hair from his eyes. Next, he boomed, surveying the room with a challenge in his eyes. Lysander stepped forward, a cool, almost languid confidence in his gait. A murmur rippled through the onlookers. Cassius's sneer deepened. "Thorne? Feeling brave, are we? Or just foolish? My family's been dueling since before your lot learned to hold a wand steady." "Perhaps," Lysander replied, his voice calm, cutting through Cassius's bluster. "But history doesn't cast spells, Lestrange. Skill does." Cassius bristled, his face darkening. "You think your little parlor tricks will save you? I'll make you regret stepping into this circle." They took their positions, wands raised. Cassius, predictably, began with a furious barrage of common offensive spells, a stupefy, followed by a stinging flipendo, and then a rather aggressive furnunculus curse. Lysander didn't bother with elaborate shields. Instead, with a series of precise, almost imperceptible flicks of his wrist and barely whispered incantations, he wove a tapestry of subtle countercharms. Cassius's stupefy seemed to lose momentum midair, dissolving into harmless sparks. The flipendo, instead of striking Lysander, veered wildly, striking a suit of armor with a loud clang. And the furnunculus, aimed squarely at Lysander's chest, somehow missed entirely, striking the wall behind him, where a single, unpleasantly large boil instantly erupted on the stone. The chamber fell silent, save for the low murmur of Lysander's last countercharm dying in the air. Cassius, panting slightly, stared in disbelief. He launched another incendio, a burst of fire. Lysander, without a word, executed a precise, complex defensive charm that seemed to absorb the flames, leaving him completely untouched. The fire simply vanished, leaving a shimmering, almost invisible ripple in the air. What in Merlin's name was that? Cassius roared, frustration warring with humiliation. "Are you cheating, Thorne? Using some obscure dark art?" "I'm using magic, Lestrange," Lysander said, his wand still raised, his expression calm, almost bored. "Perhaps you just lack the subtlety to understand it. Your bluster is a poor substitute for genuine skill." Cassius, red-faced and trembling with rage, lunged forward with a wild, untargeted curse. Lysander sighed, a dismissive sound, and with a swift, elegant flick of his wrist, cast a charm that wasn't even overtly offensive. It merely caused Cassius's wand to glow with an unnerving, sickly green light, then vibrate violently, as if in protest, until it flew from his grasp and landed with a clatter at Lysander's feet. The chamber erupted in whispers, snickers, and outright laughter. Cassius stood there, disarmed, humiliated, his face a mask of scarlet fury. He had been beaten, not by superior force, but by a superior intellect, by magic he couldn't even comprehend. His carefully constructed image of power had shattered. Lysander calmly picked up Cassius's wand, examining it as if it were a curious artifact, then held it out. "Perhaps," he said, his voice dripping with condescension, "you should stick to charms more befitting your capabilities. Something that doesn't require too much thought." Professor Blackwood, who had been observing from the shadows, stepped forward, his eyes glinting with an unreadable amusement. He clapped slowly once. "An illuminating demonstration, Mr. Thorne. Subtlety, indeed, can be far more devastating than brute force. 10 points to Slytherin for exceptional spellcasting, and 5 points for an object lesson in tactical advantage." His gaze lingered on Cassius, who was still too stunned with anger to move. "Mr. Lestrange, perhaps a review of defensive charm theory would be in order?" Cassius snatched his wand back, his eyes burning with an infernal hatred. He said nothing, but the silent promise of vengeance was palpable. He stormed out of the chamber, the heavy door slamming shut behind him. Lysander felt a surge of exhilaration. This was just the beginning. The seed of doubt had been planted in the minds of Cassius's followers, and the path for Lysander's ascendancy had been cleared, if only a little. The taste of victory was sweet, promising more. He had humbled a Lestrange, publicly, without raising his voice. He wondered what other ancient secrets, the Serpent's Coil, held, secrets that could unravel even the most formidable adversaries. The true power, he was beginning to understand, wasn't in commanding fear, but in controlling the very perception of reality. And he was only just beginning to learn how to twist it. The satisfying thud of the hex-proof scavenger bag, now filled with Cassius Lestrange's shame, still echoed faintly in the corners of Lysander's memory. The immediate aftermath had been glorious. A new ripple of respect, tinged with fear, had spread through the first-year Slytherins. Even some older students had offered fleeting, approving nods. Lysander felt the intoxicating rush of power, a validation of his superior intellect and audacious strategy. He had not merely won, he had dominated, leaving Cassius a humiliated spectacle. But the echo of victory was fleeting, replaced by a subtle, creeping unease. The whispers hadn't ceased, they had merely changed their tune. Now, they were about him. Too brazen, he overheard one second-year sneer, barely bothering to lower his voice in the great hall. Made an enemy of a Lestrange. Reckless. Another, a girl from a minor pureblood family Lysander had briefly considered cultivating, darted her eyes away when he met her gaze, a clear sign of apprehension. He noticed small shifts. Students who had previously sought his counsel now avoided eye contact, and invitations to study groups dwindled to none. His carefully constructed network of nascent influence, which he'd imagined strengthening, seemed instead to be developing cracks. Cassius Lestrange, though visibly chastened by the public display, was not idle. Lysander quickly learned that true power wasn't always wielded with a flourish. Within days, small inconveniences began to mount. A particularly rare ingredient Lysander needed for a complex charm, sourced from an obscure Hogsmeade apothecary, suddenly became unavailable. The librarian, usually amenable to his requests for restricted section access, Professor Blackwood's subtle influence, Lysander suspected, now gave him a frosty glare and cited unforeseen administrative issues. Even his usual quiet corner in the Slytherin common room was perpetually occupied by Cassius and his sycophantic hangers-on, their hushed conversations clearly punctuated by disdainful glances in Lysander's direction. "He's playing a longer game," Seraphina observed one afternoon, her voice a low murmur as they sat by the dungeon's grimy window, watching the giant squid's lazy undulations. Lysander had been meticulously polishing a silver locket, a family heirloom, lost in thought. "You humiliated him, yes. But you also showed him exactly how you operate. Now he's adapting." Lysander clicked the locket shut, the faint glint of silver catching the dim light. "He's using petty tricks. Denying access to books, hoarding ingredients. It's beneath him, and it won't last." Seraphina raised a skeptical eyebrow. "Is it beneath him, or is it effective? He's not confronting you directly. He's cutting off your lifelines. And look around, Lysander. How many of your admirers have come to your aid?" Lysander's gaze swept across the common room. A few students, the most opportunistic, still gravitated towards him, seeking favors or information. But the eager buzz, the subtle deference he'd cultivated, had diminished. They were like reeds, bending with the prevailing wind. And the wind, thanks to Cassius, was now blowing a cold front. "They're weak," Lysander scoffed, though a flicker of annoyance crossed his face. He knew Seraphina was right. He had relied on a dazzling display of individual superiority, assuming it would automatically translate into unwavering loyalty. He hadn't built foundations. He'd built a fragile tower of fear and opportunism. The true moment of reckoning came during Professor Blackwood's potions class. The assignment was deceptively simple: brew a perfect draught of living death, a notoriously difficult potion requiring precise timing and rare, volatile components. Lysander, usually excelling, found himself struggling. The rare Ashwinder eggs he needed were consistently out of stock, mysteriously. His attempts to substitute ingredients resulted in bubbling, acrid failures. Blackwood, with his hawk-like eyes, observed Lysander's frustrated attempts from across the dungeon classroom. He moved with the quiet grace of a predator, his dark robes barely rustling. Lysander felt a familiar prickle of apprehension as Blackwood stopped beside his cauldron, peering into its sickly green depths. "Trouble, Thorne." Blackwood's voice was a low rumble, laced with a familiar, unnerving amusement. "Some of the ingredients are difficult to acquire, Professor," Lysander admitted, clenching his jaw. He wouldn't openly complain about Cassius's machinations, not in front of Blackwood. Blackwood gave a slow, deliberate nod. "Indeed. Resource acquisition is a critical component of any significant undertaking. Knowledge of the arcane is only half the battle, Lysander. The other half lies in navigating the mundane, the social, the political landscape of your environment." He tapped a long, slender finger on the rim of Lysander's cauldron. "You demonstrated exceptional aptitude in overcoming a direct obstacle recently. Commendable, if perhaps a touch unsubtle." Lysander felt a flush rise to his cheeks. Blackwood never missed anything. "A blunt instrument can achieve a desired result," Blackwood continued, his voice softer now, almost conversational, "but it often leaves collateral damage. And sometimes, the targets learn to duck. Or, more effectively, to obstruct your path without ever engaging in direct conflict. True power, Lysander, is not merely about vanquishing an opponent. It is about rendering their opposition irrelevant. About ensuring your resources are abundant, your allies steadfast, and your avenues of influence unobstructed." He paused, letting his words hang in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. "Consider," Blackwood finally said, his eyes glinting in the steam rising from the potion, "if those you sought to impress were truly aligned with your ambitions, or merely drawn to your temporary success. True loyalty, Lysander, is a far more potent ingredient than any Ashwinder egg. It cannot be coerced, nor can it be bought with a moment of glory. It must be cultivated, earned. And sometimes, it demands a different kind of sacrifice than you might imagine." With that enigmatic pronouncement, Blackwood moved on, leaving Lysander to ponder his words. The draft of living death in his cauldron refused to cooperate. Later that evening, Seraphina found Lysander staring out the common room window, the locket in his hand. "He's right, you know," she said softly, joining him. "Blackwood. And Cassius. They're both proving a point you needed to learn. That I was foolish?" Lysander's tone was tight with frustration. "That you were inexperienced," Seraphina corrected, her gaze steady. "You played the crowd, Lysander. You played to their fear and their desire for a strong leader. But you didn't give them a reason to stay loyal when things got tough. You didn't build a team, you built an audience. And audiences are fickle." She leaned against the stone archway. "My family survived generations of purges and shifts in power not by being the loudest or the most brutal, but by being indispensable. By forming strategic alliances when others were bickering. By offering something genuinely valuable, not just promising retribution. So what do I do?" Lysander asked, looking at her, a rare flicker of vulnerability in his eyes. He valued Seraphina's counsel precisely because it was devoid of flattery and driven by ruthless pragmatism. "You adapt," Seraphina stated simply. "You stop trying to conquer every opponent with a single grand spell. You find new avenues. You identify who truly benefits from your success, not just who fears your wrath. You offer them something more lasting than fleeting victory. And you start with those closest to you." She met his gaze. "Like me. What makes me loyal, Lysander? Is it the promise of your crown, or the belief that together, we can build something truly formidable?" Her question hung in the air, sharp and unyielding. Lysander considered it, the answer forming in his mind. It wasn't the crown alone, it was the shared ambition, the intellectual challenge, the understanding that Seraphina saw beyond the surface, beyond the ego. She saw the potential for a reformed power, not just a usurped one. He closed the locket again, its silver now gleaming not with ambition, but with a nascent understanding. Blackwood spoke of rendering opposition irrelevant. Seraphina spoke of indispensability and lasting value. He had relied on a crude stick. It was time to forge a sharper, more subtle blade. The world outside the dungeons felt less like a chessboard and more like a complex web, each strand connected, each pull having unforeseen consequences. Cassius's petty sabotage had forced Lysander to look deeper, beyond the immediate glory of victory. He needed not just followers, but allies, individuals who saw their own rise intertwined with his. He needed to be not just feared, but valued. A new thought began to form, a complex design far grander and more intricate than simply shaming a rival. He had underestimated the subtle currents of loyalty and opposition. He would not make that mistake again. He would learn to weave, to charm, to promise not just dominance, but opportunity. He would show them a different kind of leader, one who understood that the crown was not just for wearing, but for building. And his first act would be to navigate the labyrinthine corridors of Hogwarts to secure the resources he needed, not through force, but through strategic leverage and the cultivation of unexpected deaths. The game had truly begun, and Lysander Thorne was ready to play it with a newfound, dangerous sophistication. But first, he needed a very specific book from the restricted section, and for that, he would need to find someone who owed him a favor, or better yet, someone who believed in what he was trying to achieve, even if they didn't fully understand it yet. The sting of the lost house points lingered like a particularly nasty potion burn, not just on Slytherin's tally, but on Lysander's carefully cultivated reputation. Professor Blackwood's cryptic pronouncements about the visible versus the invisible hand of power had resonated in his mind, echoing the sentiment Seraphina had expressed, albeit less subtly. Direct confrontation, while satisfying, often came with an undue price. The humiliation of Cassius had been sweet, but the subsequent detentions and the icy stares from some of the older, more traditionally minded Slytherins were a testament to the fact that power, true power, couldn't be wielded through blunt force alone. He needed to learn the art of the web, not just the serpent strike. Cassius is gloating, you know, Seraphina observed, joining Lysander by the common room fireplace, a half-finished essay on the properties of a bezoar in her lap. Her voice was low, devoid of emotion, but her eyes held a spark of irritation. He's been parading around with Mulciber and Knot, dropping hints about upstarts who don't understand the true hierarchy. Pathetic, really. Lysander merely turned the page of his worn copy of Advanced Potion Making, a text far beyond their first-year curriculum. Let him gloat. Pride is a weakness Cassius possesses in abundance. It blinds him. Lysander had indeed felt the bite of Blackwood's lessons. He had chosen the flashy strike in the previous confrontation, and while effective in the short term, it had left him exposed. He needed a more robust defense, a broader base of influence. His opportunity arrived with the announcement of the first-year Interhouse Potions competition. Professor Blackwood himself, with his usual air of detached amusement, had posted the parchment in the Great Hall. Teams of 3, judged not just on the efficacy of their brew, but on innovation and collaborative effort. The prize? A direct recommendation from Blackwood for advanced studies, a substantial boost in house points, and the invaluable opportunity to brew a personally selected, rare potion under his direct supervision. Cassius, predictably, saw it as his inherent right. He had already assembled his team, Mulciber, dull-witted but meticulous, and Parkinson, surprisingly adept at charm work despite her vapid personality. They were a solid, traditional pureblood unit, expected to win by virtue of their lineage and inherited talents. Cassius made sure everyone knew it, his sneer a permanent fixture as he watched other first years scramble to form teams. Lysander felt a familiar stir of contempt. He could, no doubt, outbrew Cassius on his own. But the competition emphasized collaboration. And Blackwood's criteria, innovation and collaborative effort, seemed specifically designed to challenge the rigid traditionalism that Cassius embodied. This was a chance not just to beat Cassius, but to demonstrate a different form of leadership. A more potent, subtle one. He looked at Seraphina. She was brilliant, his indispensable right hand, but 2 were not 3. He needed a third. Not a minion, but an asset. He needed someone overlooked, someone with a particular, perhaps unconventional, talent that could be leveraged. Lysander closed his eyes, replaying every moment in potions class, every observation, every casual comment he'd overheard. Thornwood, Lysander said, opening his eyes. Seraphina raised an eyebrow. Marcus Thornwood? The half-blood from Wiltshire? He's quiet. Good at theory, surprisingly, but he practically shakes when Blackwood calls on him. Precisely, Lysander replied, a thin smile touching his lips. He has a prodigious memory for ingredient properties and obscure brewing techniques. He's intimidated by the likes of Cassius, yes, but he yearns for recognition. To be valued for his intellect, not his bloodline. Cassius's arrogance suppresses talent like his. I, on the other hand, can offer him a stage. And a third? Seraphina prodded. Thornwood might have the theory, but he lacks practical confidence. We need someone who isn't afraid to get their hands dirty, or perhaps, to challenge conventional methods. Lysander pondered, his gaze drifting across the common room. His eyes landed on a figure hunched over a grimy copy of Magical Maladies, muttering to himself. Elias Greer, a pureblood, yes, but from a family whose fortunes had dwindled generations ago. Greer was loud, rebellious, and fiercely independent. He often clashed with Cassius over minor slights, but lacked the strategic foresight to make his defiance count. He was a wild card, a disruptor. Greer, Lysander said, this time with a hint of genuine intrigue. He's impulsive, unrefined, but he's got an uncanny knack for experimentation. He disregards rules, not out of malice, but out of a desire to see what happens. That kind of unorthodox thinking could be invaluable for innovation. Seraphina considered this, a faint smile gracing her lips. A timid theoretician and a boisterous maverick. An unlikely combination, even for Slytherin. But if anyone can conduct such an orchestra, it's you, Lysander. Lysander found Marcus Thornwood in the library, hunched over a stack of ancient scrolls, his face pale in the dim light. The boy flinched when Lysander approached, already bracing for a taunt. Thornwood, Lysander began, his voice level, devoid of any of the subtle condescension he usually reserved for his peers. I understand you've been studying Professor Merriweather's notes on the forgotten uses of Moopedaldo. A fascinating, if somewhat obscure, field of study. Thornwood blinked, surprised. Yes. It's quite complex. The way its luminescent properties can be stabilized with a properly charmed quartz matrix, it's remarkable. His voice gained a quiet passion, a flicker of pride. Indeed, Lysander acknowledged, allowing a sliver of genuine admiration into his tone. Your understanding of such intricacies is well above your year, which is why I'm offering you a place on my potions competition team. Thornwood gaped. Your team? But Cassius's team, they're already set. He glanced nervously around, as if Cassius might materialize from behind a bookshelf. Cassius's team is a monument to mediocrity, bound by tradition and outdated notions of purity, Lysander stated, his voice gaining an edge of disdain. My team will be a testament to intellect, innovation, and strategic brilliance. You, Thornwood, possess a mind that could elevate us to victory. I am not interested in your bloodline, only your skill. This is a chance to prove to everyone that genuine talent triumphs over inherited privilege. Thornwood's eyes, usually downcast, met Lysander's. The offer was audacious, a direct challenge to the unspoken hierarchy, and for the first time, Lysander saw a spark of defiance beneath the timidity. What would I need to do? Be yourself. Bring your knowledge. I'll handle the rest, Lysander promised. Recruiting Greer was a different beast altogether. Lysander found him in the Transfiguration courtyard, attempting to turn a pebble into a miniature dragon that mostly resembled a lumpy toad with wings. Greer, Lysander called out, watching the toad dragon flop to the ground. Greer grunted, wiping sweat from his brow. What do you want, Thorne? Come to laugh at my experimental transfiguration. Quite the opposite, Lysander countered, leaning against a pillar. I'm here to offer you an opportunity to truly irk Cassius Lestrange, not with half-baked charm work, but with genuine, undeniable success. Greer scoffed. As if. Lestrange and his lot are always destined to win these things. Tradition, pure blood this, pure blood that. It's sickening. Precisely my point, Lysander said, pushing off the pillar. The potions competition is coming up. Cassius has already assembled his little pureblood cabal, believing victory is his by right. I intend to demonstrate that true power doesn't flow from antiquated bloodlines, but from sheer ability and strategic daring. I need someone on my team with a willingness to push boundaries, to experiment, to innovate where others cling to rote memorization. Greer's eyes narrowed, a flicker of interest replacing his usual cynicism. You want me? I'm not exactly known for my adherence to textbook methods. That is your greatest asset, Lysander replied, meeting Greer's gaze. Cassius's team will follow the recipe to the letter. We, however, will explore the hidden pathways, the unconventional solutions that yield superior results. You have an intuition for ingredients, a boldness that most lack. Join Seraphina, Thornwood, and me, and let's show the established order what true ingenuity looks like. A slow, feral grin spread across Greer's face. Humiliate Lestrange with potions? I'm in. What's the catch? No catch, Lysander said, his own smile mirroring Greer's. Only a shared desire to ascend. The following days were a whirlwind of focused activity in a secluded corner of the Slytherin common room. Lysander orchestrated, Seraphina organized, Thornwood researched, and Greer experimented. Lysander didn't just issue commands. He fostered an environment where ideas were debated, theories tested, and even his own suggestions were subjected to scrutiny. He observed Thornwood's meticulous notes, his encyclopedic knowledge of rare ingredients, and channeled his anxieties into precise planning. He encouraged Greer's wilder impulses, refining them with purpose, transforming chaotic bursts of creativity into targeted innovation. Their chosen potion for the competition was a complex, mirthful mixture, a rarely brewed concoction that produced temporary euphoria and vivid, pleasant hallucinations. It required delicate handling of volatile ingredients and precise timing. Cassius's team, Lysander knew, would likely opt for a standard, difficult but known brew. His team, however, was aiming for true mastery, with a subtle modification Thornwood had unearthed and Greer had refined, a variant that would produce a spectrum of personalized joyful visions, tailored to the deepest desires of the imbiber. A truly innovative touch. Lysander guided their discussions, nudging them towards consensus, mediating Greer's impatience and Thornwood's self-doubt. He learned to listen, truly listen, to their insights, recognizing that their collective intelligence far outstripped his own individual brilliance in this specific domain. Seraphina watched, offering quiet, pointed observations, validating Lysander's new approach. This was not the brute manipulation he was known for. This was leadership. On the day of the competition, the Great Hall buzzed with anticipation. Teams were arrayed at individual cauldrons, supervised by a panel of professors, including a watchful Professor Blackwood. Cassius, resplendent in freshly pressed robes, cast a disdainful glance at Lysander's motley crew. Good luck, Thorne, Cassius sneered, his voice dripping with condescension. You'll need it. Some things, after all, are simply beyond one's station. Lysander merely gave a tight-lipped smile. Perhaps. Or perhaps, Cassius, some stations are simply outdated. The whistle blew, signaling the start. Their cauldron bubbled, a low, rhythmic hum filling the air. Thornwood meticulously measured, his hands steady, his knowledge guiding every drop. Greer, surprisingly focused, crushed herbs with a practiced ferocity, his keen senses alert to every shift in aroma or color. Seraphina stood by, ready with counter-charms for any accidental spills or rival sabotage attempts, her gaze sharp. Lysander, however, oversaw the entire process, his mind a step ahead, anticipating next moves, ensuring perfect synchronization. He added the final ingredient, a single, shimmering moonpetal dew, Thornwood's contribution, just as the timer chimed. A collective gasp went through the hall as their potion, instead of the expected uniform golden glow, pulsed with a shimmering, iridescent light, shifting through a spectrum of colors that seemed to dance with an inner life. Professor Blackwood, usually impassive, leaned forward, a flicker of something akin to genuine interest in his eyes. The judges tasted the potions. Cassius's team presented a perfectly adequate, albeit standard, elixir of enlightenment. It was good. But then came Lysander's team's mirthful mixture. Professor Blackwood, taking a cautious sip, closed his eyes for a moment. A subtle, almost imperceptible smile played on his lips. When he opened his eyes, they seemed to hold a flicker of youthful amusement, quickly masked. He looked at Lysander's team, then specifically at Lysander, and gave the barest of nods. The results were announced. Lysander's team had won, not just by points, but by unanimous acclaim for their innovation and collaborative excellence. The House of Slytherin erupted, a mix of genuine pride and grudging respect for a victory achieved not through traditional means, but through cleverness and diverse talent. Cassius's face was a mask of furious disbelief, his carefully constructed superiority shattered. Lysander didn't gloat. He didn't need to. The quiet gratitude in Thornwood's eyes, the triumphant, rebellious glint in Greer's, and Seraphina's knowing smirk were far more satisfying. He had learned a crucial lesson. A single serpent could strike, but a meticulously woven web, supported by diverse strengths, could entangle an empire. Lysander had tasted the potential of this new kind of power, and it was intoxicating. He wondered what other, unlikely alliances awaited his touch, waiting to be woven into his burgeoning design for a reformed magical world. The game, he realized, had just begun. The tapestry of Hogwarts was vast and intricately woven, a complex interplay of power and influence that Lysander had once believed could be seized by force, by dazzling displays of intellect and ruthless strategy. But the fallout from his earlier miscalculations, the harsh lessons learned from Professor Blackwood, and the unexpected success of his recent, more collaborative venture had refined his understanding. Power, he now realized, was not a crown to be snatched, but a vast network of invisible threads, each one offering leverage to those cunning enough to grasp and manipulate them. He observed this truth daily from his perch in the library's darkest corner, ostensibly researching ancient runic sequences, but in truth, watching. He saw the fleeting expressions of ambition, the subtle shifts in alliances, the unspoken desires that drove students and even faculty. It was a quieter game than the one he'd initially played, but infinitely more profound. One such thread presented itself in the form of a disgruntled Ravenclaw, Slytherin Vance, no relation to Seraphina, who was struggling with a complex charm for her advanced charms essay. She'd been muttering about the unfairness of Professor Flitwick's grading, her frustration radiating like heat. Lysander, having overheard her woes, waited until she left her textbook unattended, then subtly, almost imperceptibly, left a small, hastily scribbled note tucked within its pages. The note contained a concise, elegant solution, a minor variation on the charm's casting that would grant it far greater stability and aesthetic appeal, the very details Flitwick prized. A week later, Lysander watched Alara receive her essay back, her face a mixture of surprise and triumph. She glanced around, a flicker of suspicion in her eyes, but saw only other students preoccupied with their own work. The next time she passed Lysander in the corridor, there was a subtle nod, an almost imperceptible dip of her head. No words were exchanged, no explicit debt acknowledged, but a thread had been spun. Alara, a diligent and well-connected Ravenclaw, now unknowingly owed him a minor favor, a sliver of loyalty that could, one day, be called upon. "You're becoming a phantom, Lysander," Seraphina observed one evening in the Slytherin common room, her voice a low murmur that blended with the crackle of the fire. She sat beside him, nursing a cup of spiced tea, her sharp eyes missing nothing. Less the serpent striking, more the shadow lengthening. Lysander merely turned a page in his book, a rare smile playing on his lips. "Striking is noisy. Shadows are silent. And shadows, my dear Seraphina, can reach where light cannot." "And what exactly are you reaching for these days?" she pressed, her gaze intense. "Still the crown." He closed the book, setting it aside with a soft thud. "The crown is merely a symbol. What I seek is the loom itself." The ability to weave the tapestry as I see fit, to decide where the threads lie and which patterns emerge. He paused, leaning back against the plush velvet sofa. Our collaboration in the last term taught me much. Direct confrontation garners attention, yes, but also direct opposition. Subtlety, however, breeds opportunity. Seraphina nodded slowly, a hint of admiration in her eyes. Cassius is practically apoplectic. He can't pin anything on you. You haven't publicly challenged him in weeks, yet his influence seems to be waning. Lysander chuckled softly. He fights ghosts. He expects a duel, a public humiliation. He doesn't understand the power of a whispered rumor, a perfectly timed piece of information, or a well-placed act of anonymous assistance. When his allies begin to subtly question his judgment, when opportunities he expects suddenly dry up, he'll blame everyone but the unseen hand orchestrating it all. Indeed, Cassius Lestrange had grown visibly agitated. Lysander observed him storming through the common room more frequently, his face a thundercloud, his usual entourage of fawning purebloods looking increasingly uncomfortable. It wasn't just Lysander's influence, it was the cumulative effect of Lysander's other allies, those from his unlikely alliances, subtly shifting the dynamics within the houses. A Hufflepuff prefect, who Lysander had helped navigate a complex detention schedule that semester, now routinely forgot to report minor Slytherin infractions. A Ravenclaw Quidditch enthusiast, whose arcane knowledge of ancient broom-modifying charms Lysander had subtly referenced in a passing conversation with a senior player, found himself suddenly included in strategy meetings. These were tiny ripples, but they eroded Cassius's once unquestioned authority. In potions class, Professor Blackwood watched Lysander with an unervingly knowing expression. Lysander was brewing a particularly delicate potion of dreamless sleep, his movements precise and economical, his focus absolute. Unlike many of his peers, who were still prone to splashing ingredients or muttering incantations under their breath, Lysander worked with a quiet intensity that bespoke genuine mastery. Thorne, Blackwood's voice cut through the bubbling and clinking, smooth as polished obsidian. Your potion, a fine specimen. Pristine. Balanced. You have a knack for finding the optimal path, don't you? Lysander looked up, meeting the professor's piercing gaze. Efficiency, Professor, is merely a choice of method. Indeed, Blackwood mused, circling Lysander's cauldron. And method, I've observed, can evolve. From brute force to elegant persuasion. From a sledgehammer to a surgeon's scalpel. Which do you find more satisfying, Thorne? The shattering impact or the precise, almost invisible incision? Lysander held Blackwood's gaze, understanding the unspoken question. The scalpel, Professor. It allows for greater control over the outcome. And the recovery. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched Blackwood's lips. A wise perspective for one so young. But remember, a scalpel, wielded without purpose, can cause as much harm as a hammer. What is the ultimate incision you wish to make, Lysander? What is the purpose of all this careful manipulation? The question hung in the air, potent and heavy. Lysander merely offered a respectful nod, allowing Blackwood to move on. He knew his purpose, deeply ingrained within him, to reshape the magical world, to elevate himself, to prove his worth. But Blackwood's question served as a reminder that the path to that purpose could be paved with many different intentions. Later that week, Lysander found himself poring over an ancient, leather-bound tome in the restricted section, a book he'd only gained access to through a series of cleverly exchanged favors with the librarian, Pants. A perfectly polished silver bookmark with a subtle, self-repairing charm had gone a long way. The tome detailed obscure applications of arithmancy, specifically how certain numerological sequences could subtly enhance or disrupt magical currents in specific locations. It was a theoretical exploration of ambient magic, far removed from practical spellcasting, but Lysander saw its potential. He envisioned its application not in raw power, but in influence. What if a particular sequence, subtly etched or enchanted into the very foundations of a building, could amplify feelings of loyalty, or discord, or compliance? What if a series of such symbols, discreetly placed throughout the school, could make conversations more easily overheard by certain individuals or dampen the ability to lie? The implications were staggering. This wasn't about casting powerful curses, it was about designing the environment, shaping the very flow of thought and emotion. It was about making the tapestry feel the way he wanted it to feel, without anyone ever seeing his hands on the shuttle. His eyes scanned a particularly dense passage, detailing a set of ancient runes supposedly capable of creating a localized echo of magical intent, allowing a skilled practitioner to subtly nudge the perceptions of those within its field. It was theoretical, highly complex, and seemed almost ridiculously impractical for a first year. Yet, Lysander's mind raced, connecting the arcane symbols to the subtle threads he was already weaving. This wasn't just knowledge, it was a blueprint for a deeper, more insidious form of control. He looked up, a glint in his eyes that wasn't merely ambition, but a dawning realization of the sheer scope of what he could achieve. His Dark Lord wouldn't rule through fear, but through an almost invisible, irresistible pull, shaping minds and destinies with the precision of a master craftsman. He was no longer just a brilliant first year, but an architect of influence, laying the groundwork for a reign built on the unseen. And as he gazed at the intricate symbols, a thought sparked, cold and exhilarating. What if Hogwarts itself, with all its ancient magic and hidden passages, could be his first grand design? A subtle, pervasive network of influence, woven into the very stone, shaping the very air students breathed. The thought was audacious, terrifying, and utterly captivating. He traced the lines of an ancient rune with his finger, a chill running down his spine. The serpent's crown wasn't merely a goal, it was becoming a methodology. And Hogwarts was ripe for the weaving.